Deputy Davey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Minister, this question is obviously linked to the first priority in terms of the independent review mechanism. About 8 weeks ago, you told the House that the review was at a very advanced stage in the vast majority of cases, and that after Easter you'd be beginning the process of notifying people of the outcome. We got a bit of the same response today to the first question, but subtle differences as well. And I'm wondering what the story is, why nobody's been contacted in the intervening 8 weeks, and where we're at, because the one consistent thing has been the lack of engagement and dialogue with those people who went to the panel.
Minister.
Well, look, the government agreed to set up the independent review mechanism to deal with a whole variety of cases of complaints. Not all of which, it turned out, are actually about An Garda Síochána, but a substantial number are. Quite a number are about other bodies, experiences in court. Some of them are about property issues. So there's a whole range of issues within the complaints which have been made. Now, this is an independent process, and I was very keen and very committed to ensuring that from the beginning to the end of the process it would be seen as independent and robust. I have received, and the Department has received, quite a number of the recommendations at this point. So the process should be completing over the next couple of months. What is important now is to give obviously the legal advice has been made available to the Department in certain of the cases. The question now is to communicate that, obviously because it's legal advice, to the Department, to myself, and there are quite a number of parts of that legal advice that refer to third party. So I now have to find the best way of communicating as robustly and in as fulsome a manner as possible the outcome of the process, the recommendations, and in order to ensure that it fulfills those criteria and that we can communicate in the most effective way possible with the complainants. I have now decided, when I received the first cases just a couple of weeks ago and looked at the recommendations, on examination of that, I decided that the best way to fulfil that and to be true to it being a fully independent process from beginning right through was to ask a judicial figure to oversee that process of the communication to the complainants in each and every instance.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the problem is that nobody who's participated in it so far sees it as independent and robust, because originally when it was initiated, they were told that it would take 8 weeks. It's a paper review, let's be clear about this, and 8 weeks was more than ample time for you to decide that some issues were matters that related to the judiciary or land matters or so on. So we can park them. They weren't contributing to any delay in this scenario whatsoever. 2 months ago, you told us here that you had these outcomes and you'd be communicating to people. And now we're told that over the next couple of months, people may hear back. There's going to be a lot of really distressed people when they hear this. Now, I made the point previously that we know that some of the cases that have gone to this panel, that even preliminary inquiries were not made by the panel about some of the information contained in those reports. So it couldn't in any way constitute a robust inquiry. It's a paper review.
Thank you.
And, you know, I have to say, Minister, in some ways this is going to create a bigger problem than solving one now, if they're getting an answer maybe sometime before Christmas.
Thank you,
you know, you haven't explained where the shift has come from.
Thank you, Minister.
What's happened in quite a number of cases is that more information has come into the Department, to the review mechanism. That has had to go back to Council for further analysis. In any circumstances where the review mechanism wanted to get extra information, for example from GSOC or An Garda Síochána or wherever, if there was further written information they wanted, they have been able to get that information. It is an analysis of all of the data. I don't agree with your description of the ease with which it could be decided that certain cases were part of the process and others weren't. In fact, it's been quite time-consuming. Clearly, the original 6 to 8 weeks was a miscalculation in terms of the number of cases, and the process is very detailed. It is robust. It's the first time any government has taken these complaints, over 300, set up an independent process with council, with senior council, with junior council, where they are completely independent, reviewing the material, and in fact have come back to the department and in various cases have recommended further action. When I said a couple of months, I obviously mean by the summer. I do not expect that it will go on any further than that. But I am now at the point where I've made the decision that we will bring in that judicial figure and that the notifications will start once that person is in place, and I expect things to move ahead quickly from that point onwards. I've just now started receiving the recommendations in the last few weeks, and that's when I started to examine the individual cases. I decided that in order to continue that independence that we set up in the process originally, that this was the way to go forward.
I think it's very important to put on the record that this process, in fact, is not detailed at all. And either you're being misinformed or you're not being kept up on this issue. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it is absolutely not the case that people were asked for more information. There has been no communication with the people who gave information to this panel. So how could they look for more information? What we do know is that many people who volunteered new information were told by the panel and by yourself that this is not an investigative body, that they don't want to see new material, that the only job of this panel is not to do or come up with an outcome, but to decide what to do. It's not an independent panel. You didn't advertise for the people who would engage. They didn't meet with the people. So it's not the case that they were delayed because of new information. And I didn't set a short time frame. You were the one who set the time frame originally. We were all shocked, actually, at the idea that such a time frame would be advanced. But the only reason in which it was because it was only a paper review, and it has remained as such, and it has refused to take on board extra information and hasn't even queried information that was there.
Deputy. I'm a little over time.
Just to clarify that what I said was that where the independent panel decided that they would need further information based on the review of the cases, that they asked for that. What I also said was that quite a lot of information has come in on an ongoing basis from the members of the public, the complainants in these cases, and that information, even where a recommendation was already made, that information was sent back to the panel for them to analyse and to take into account when they were making the decision. I think you're extremely dismissive of a process that has been put in place, as I say, for the first time, to analyse these cases, and I believe the individual responses. There are recommendations of further action in a number of the cases that have come in. That will be those recommendations. As I said, I can't envisage a circumstance where I wouldn't accept the recommendations of council. You're very dismissive of a process that is about objective, independent, legal examination of information, in which in many cases some of which, as I've said, have been around since 1969. So obviously the initial time frame was incorrect, and I've said that from the very beginning, once I realised the volume of cases, that it would take time, but it is an independent process, and in order to continue that independence, I've now asked a judicial figure to be involved in the communication, the robust communication of the outcome of the investigation to the people concerned, and I certainly stand over that process. If you were to interview people individually, you would be talking about a different initiative completely to the one that was announced. As independent and robust